March 4, 2022. A Thursday evening in Kamas, Utah. Eric Richins had just celebrated a major real estate deal with his wife. By morning, he'd be dead. His wife Kouri told deputies he'd taken some pain pills, said he had a bad back, but the toxicology report would tell a very different story. Eric Richins had 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, not prescription fentanyl, street fentanyl, and someone had made sure he swallowed it. 4 years later, a jury would convict Kouri Richins of her husband's murder. But here's the thing prosecutors couldn't answer. How exactly did she do it? They couldn't prove whether she slipped it in his drink, mixed it into his food, put it in a pill bottle. The method, unknown. And yet, they convicted her anyway. First-degree aggravated murder. Life in prison. This is the story of how a digital trail, a house cleaner's testimony, and a children's book about grief became the evidence that proved murder without ever explaining the murder itself. Eric and Kouri Richins looked like the definition of a mountain town power couple. 5 kids, a custom home in Kamas, real estate ventures across Summit County. Eric was 49, a businessman, a father. By all accounts, he loved his kids. He coached their sports teams. He was building something for the family. But behind the Instagram perfect life, something was wrong. Financial pressure, marital strain. And Kouri Richins was making plans. Prosecutors would later reveal that Kouri was having an affair. She believed she stood to receive millions of dollars from her husband's life insurance if he died. But Eric was suspicious. He'd changed his will without telling her. He'd added safeguards. He knew something wasn't right. The night of March 3rd, Eric and Kouri celebrated. He'd just closed on a property deal. They toasted with Moscow mules. Then they went to bed. Kouri would later tell investigators she woke up around 2 a.m. and found Eric unresponsive, cold to the touch. She called 911. When the toxicology results came back, investigators realized this wasn't accidental. Eric had roughly 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his body. The medical examiner determined the fentanyl was illicit, street drugs, not prescription, and critically, it had been ingested orally. Swallowed. Now investigators had a question. How does a successful businessman with no drug history end up with 5 times the lethal dose of street fentanyl in his stomach? That's when they started looking at Kouri's phone, and her search history painted a picture that circumstantial evidence would complete. Digital forensics revealed Kouri had searched for lethal dose of fentanyl. She'd also searched for luxury prisons, comfortable places to serve time. But search history alone doesn't convict someone of murder. Prosecutors needed more. They needed to prove she had access to the drugs. Enter Carmen Lauber, Kouri's housecleaner, and the prosecution's star witness. Lauber testified that Kouri had asked her to buy fentanyl pills, not once, 3 separate times, and Lauber did it, purchasing drugs from a man at a gas station. According to Lauber's testimony, she purchased the pills at Kouri's request and handed them over. She said she didn't know what they were for. Now prosecutors had means, they had motive, they had digital evidence showing research into how much fentanyl would kill someone. They were missing one thing. They couldn't prove how Kouri actually got the fentanyl into Eric's body. Was it in his drink? His food? A pill? The defense hammered this point repeatedly. Without proof of the method, they argued, how could the jury be certain beyond a reasonable doubt? But here's what makes this case remarkable. The prosecution didn't need to prove the method. They just needed to prove she did it. Utah law doesn't require prosecutors to prove exactly how a murder was committed. They need to prove who did it and that they intended to do it. And the circumstantial evidence, when you looked at all of it together, pointed to one conclusion. Kouri Richins wanted her husband dead, and she made it happen. The searches for lethal doses, the affair, the insurance policies, the house cleaner buying drugs at gas stations, the fentanyl in his stomach. And then there was the book, the children's book. The detail that made this case impossible to forget. While under investigation for her husband's murder, Kouri Richins wrote and published a children's book about grief. It was called Are You With Me? The book was dedicated to helping children cope with loss, the same children whose father she allegedly murdered, the same children who would eventually watch their mother stand trial. Prosecutors called it audacious, the defense called it irrelevant. The jury, they didn't look away from it. In February 2026, 4 years after Eric's death, the murder trial finally began in a Utah courtroom. For 3 weeks, prosecutors built their case piece by piece, not with a smoking gun, but with something almost more powerful, a pattern. Carmen Lauber took the stand and described the drug purchases in detail: 3 trips to a gas station, 3 handoffs of fentanyl pills, all at Kouri's request. The defense cross-examined her hard. Why did you buy the drugs? Why didn't you ask questions? Why are you testifying now? Lauber's answers weren't perfect. She'd made mistakes. She'd cooperated late in the investigation, but her core testimony held. Digital forensics experts walked the jury through Kouri's phone, the searches, the timing, the pattern of behavior in the weeks before Eric died. And then there was the money. Prosecutors detailed the insurance policies, the financial pressure, the millions Kouri expected to receive. Kouri was charged with first-degree aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, forgery, and insurance fraud. Multiple charges, multiple patterns of deception. The defense's strategy was clear: without proof of method, there's reasonable doubt. She might have bought the drugs for someone else, for recreational use, for anything. But the prosecution countered: look at the whole picture, not one piece of evidence, all of it, together. On March 16, 2026, after deliberating for several hours, the jury reached a verdict: guilty on all counts. First-degree aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, forgery, insurance fraud. The digital trail had spoken. The circumstantial evidence had convinced 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt. Kouri Richins showed no visible reaction as the verdict was read. She faces 25 years to life in prison. Sentencing is scheduled for May. This case offers important lessons about how modern prosecutions work. Digital evidence, your searches, your messages, your patterns, can become the case against you. Circumstantial evidence, when it accumulates, can be just as powerful as direct evidence. Juries aren't required to see the crime happen. They're required to be convinced it did. If you're following true crime cases like this one, consider that the most damning evidence often isn't what you'd expect. It's the pattern, the timeline, the behavior that doesn't fit. Understanding how investigators follow money trails can help you recognize warning signs in your own life: unusual insurance policies, hidden accounts, financial pressure that doesn't make sense. For those interested in how these cases are built, consider following court proceedings directly. Many trials are now streamed. You can watch evidence accumulate in real time. If these kinds of deep dives into evidence and investigation interest you, hit subscribe. We cover cases like this every week: the evidence, the investigation, the outcome. Eric Richins left behind 5 children. Whatever verdict the court reached, those children lost their father. Now they've effectively lost their mother too. The children's book she wrote, Are You With Me?, remains available for purchase, a monument to something difficult to name. The Kouri Richins case will likely be studied in law schools for years to come. It proves that circumstantial evidence, when it tells a complete story, can be enough. Prosecutors didn't need to prove whether she put it in his drink or his food. They needed to prove she's the reason he died. The jury agreed. The digital trail we leave behind is permanent. Our searches, our messages, our patterns. In a courtroom, they become evidence. They become the story of who we really are. Kouri Richins searched for lethal doses in luxury prisons. 4 years later, a jury decided those searches told them everything they needed to know. Eric Richins didn't get to see his children grow up. He didn't get to close more deals or coach more games. He was 49 years old. And the housecleaner who bought the pills. Carmen Lauber's testimony helped convict her employer. The person who asked her to make those gas station trips. That's the case of Kouri Richins, convicted without the murder weapon, without witnesses to the act, without knowing exactly how the poison found its way into her husband's body. Some stories end with all the answers. This one ends with a verdict. The jury decided that was enough.